looks like the saddest frog in that picture.
Someone said goldfish. Fried goldfish. The people are not feeling the Steve Harvey suits. They're not feeling the sensible shoes anymore. Some hard shoes in there.
Like, I never really felt bad, but Gene, when he's making the thing, he goes, I'm going to find, like, I don't want to do a Gene impersonation because every time I do it sounds like Robin Leach. But I can't do Gene without sounding like Robin Leach. But he goes, I'm going to find the saddest picture of Lori Lightfoot.
Mm-hmm.
The original title was Lori Lightfoot Gets on the Good Foot Out of Chicago. But that was too long.
Wow.
No? Are you glad we went with this one?
I'm glad we went with this one. And it refers to her shoes, which is good.
Greetings, I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. So glad to have you guys here with us tonight for what should be a very interesting conversation about not just the current ousting of Mayor Lori Lightfoot, but a deeper discussion about Chicago machine politics, racial coalition politics, and its history. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live. That simple passive gesture goes a long way in the support of independent left media. There will be no champagne room tonight as we'll be doing our monthly movie night tomorrow and possibly a quick, maybe patron-only stream, maybe just normal stream, in honor of De La Soul's music being available on all streaming platforms. For those of you that are subscribers and patrons, thank you for your continued support. That is the fuel in the engine of the TIR machine. If you'd like to wear your support, then let the people know with TIR merch. Sam, would you like to tell us a little bit about the merchandise?
Oh man, I was drinking some water.
Oh, you know what? Forget it. Oh, no,
no. Let's talk about the merch. No. You're wearing 3 layers today. Let's talk about wearing some clothes.
Exactly.
So, we literally got you covered. We got hoodies, different colors, unbelievable, matching all of your footwear, all of your sensible footwear.
Like Tim's
or whatever Lori Lightfoot wears. She's a trendsetter, style icon. Lori Lightfoot.
Lori Lightfoot wears Nike ACGs.
I was going to say Skechers.
No, she's like an ACG kind of gal. You know, you got a little bit of money. You pay the extra, $75 for a shoe that is comforting while you hike in the mean streets of Chicago.
There you go. You get a little ankle pessimism going. Along with your mouse pad while you pack it up to leave the mayor's office.
Why are you packing up all your stuff?
And off you go.
Closing time. Do you think do you think they're playing that for Lori Lightfoot?
Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. That's what they said. Oh, Lori.
Well, also, if you'd like access to champagne rooms past and present, become a patron. It's as simple as going to patreon.com/BitterLakePresents, and for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year, it can all be yours. And you can be a part of the live audience for the Mau Mau Hour, and you can join us for movie night, which should be a fun experience, as I will have people in my house for movie night, which I've never done before, and I don't know how exactly we're going to set it up, but we'll definitely figure it out. So that should also be fun. Speaking of movie night, let's bring in the man that picked the movie. He is my homie, my dog, my co-host, the man of the Mau Mau Hour, who was just doing a show with FD Signifier. That's going to be coming out soon. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. Peace and greetings, M. Toussaint.
Hello.
Are you excited?
How are your shoes?
Yes, y'all.
Are you okay? Here's a question that I want to know. So you guys all know that I always wear pants. I don't wear sweatpants. I don't wear casual. I'm always in jeans. Maybe if it's really hot, shorts. But do you guys wear shoes?
Currently, I'm wearing jogging shorts and I'm barefoot.
Jogging shorts. I didn't see that.
You didn't
coming.
think that Pascal would be in jogging shorts?
No. Thought he had some starchy khaki shorts. The ones that make you look round. All tapering. Yeah. Some boat shoes.
Toussaint's wearing a house coat right now and got curlers in her hair.
House coat, yes.
That's why she never, when we do video calls, always turns off the camera, so you can't see the house coat.
Got to.
Toussaint looks like Mama from Mama's Family when you call.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Why did you remember Mama's Family?
Because of the house coat.
Mama's from Mama's Family or from That's My Mama?
From Mama's Family. Not even That's My Mama. She culturally appropriated
Mama's Family.
Mama's Family, yes.
With yeah.
Not Carol Burnett. What was her name?
Lawrence, Vicki Lawrence.
Vicki Lawrence. Yes.
Vicki Lawrence, yes.
You got a Vicki Lawrence house coat on right now.
The worst. You are the worst.
Yelling at kids that ain't even his.
That ain't even his.
And if you want to know,
fashion slander to Lori Lightfoot tonight, and maybe Pascal,
who's wearing jogging shorts and Gucci slides.
They're gray jogging shorts.
Okay, can I ask you guys a question before we go start the show? And I know people are gonna get pissed off because they, why do you guys take so long? Because I can, goddammit. There's nothing you can do about it. When did people start calling flip-flops slides?
I think it's the West Coast thing, man, because they don't do that.
I haven't heard that till I saw it in a movie. I was like, slides. What is a slide? What does that mean? Like
I think slides are particularly. They're not the thongs. They're the ones that go with the flap over the foot.
But isn't it still flip flops?
No,
hey,
flip flops.
I live in Miami. You got a lot of Haitians. All you hear is pantouf, which is Haitian Creole for sandals, bro. So
they don't say sapats.
Sapat pantouf, depends on what you feel.
But thongs, that was the thing. Like before it was draws, it was like thongs were the ones your toes went in.
Right.
Yeah, and that was like a thing too. And is it thongs or flip flops? And I remember when Fila had the Fila, like young people say slides now. The Fila flip flops. And then the Adidas ones.
They're not
And that was like
flip-flops. They don't
actual wear.
flip-flop.
But do you remember that? That would be part of people's outfit in like the mid to late 90s. It was like you had to have the, windbreaker sweatsuit that matched the flip-flop.
I never understood why cats would wear the sandals, flip-flops, or whatever, and socks. I'm like, why?
Flip-flops? That's Outkast. Flip-flops and socks. Remember Outkast in their first record? In the video for Players Ball.
Yeah.
They're wearing, that's what they say, flip-flop socks.
Yeah. Best of both worlds, I guess.
You're not supposed to wear flip-flops and socks. I will wear. If you come to my house, you will see me in some sort of flip-flop and sock answering the door.
Very West Coast. Very West Coast.
That is very West Coast.
Because first of all, please don't walk on my beautifully mopped floor with your dirty ass shoes.
Mm.
And then, this is an Asian house. Take your shoes off. And I will have on. I got Crocs. They have the cheap Crocs at the Mexican Walmart.
You have Crocs?
I have some.
From
They're like
Walmart?
bootleg Crocs.
Oh my gosh.
My mom bought some Crocs recently. She's like,
Does she rock the socks in the Crocs?
no, she's not rocking socks in the Crocs. She's just wearing the Crocs.
She's from proper Florida. That's good.
Tucson. So when you come here to visit, I will answer the door with flip-flops and socks, unless you come in the summer and the toes out.
Dude, you just really like flirting with all the dad things. Like you skate around it. It's weird. It's weird. I'm just gonna say that.
I'm a dad.
You are a dad.
Right? When you are 40 with an infant, you've thrown cool out the window.
Yes.
Like when I first had kids, I was young. I was like a young dad. Now I'm like an old man with a little, like my daughter calls me grandpa dad because I'm just this old
Grandpa
dad.
Man, I know guys way older than you that have kids. Young kids.
Grandpa dad.
It's weird.
Right?
Grandpa dad.
Grandpa dad. I am not a grandpa, but she just thinks it's funny because I'm old.
It's
But
coming.
let's. Jesus Christ. Patience. That's all I need the phone to ring with a guess what. How things have changed in just one tumultuous term for the soon-to-be mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. The first gay black woman to be elected in that position will not have the chance to be reelected. Lightfoot, a Democrat who ran on police reform in a city during a moment when overzealous nature of police brutality and murder was on the minds of many in major metropolitan areas. For a city like Chicago, the high-profile police murder of Laquan McDonald required a mayoral candidate that could rein in the Chicago Police Department and keep crime at a minimum. Lightfoot did neither. From a recent article in the New Yorker, the nonpartisan race attracted national attention because it offered the rarest of political tableau, an incumbent mayor struggling for survival. After a commanding election victory 4 years ago on a platform of political and police reform, Lightfoot was forced to govern through crises that would break any executive, a deadly pandemic, and a long summer of social unrest. Homicide rates spiked in Chicago as residents overwhelmingly began to worry about crime more than any other pressing issue. And Lightfoot, a former prosecutor who had never held elected office before, stumbled repeatedly as she strained to hold together the coalitions that had made her mayor in the first place. Lightfoot alienated just about every ideological faction in Chicago. The city's second black mayor, Lightfoot, battled Johnson, a proud progressive, for support in Chicago's pivotal African-American neighborhoods. Left-leaning organizations and local leaders viewed Lightfoot with increasing skepticism, portraying her as a pro-police neoliberal like her predecessor, Rahm Emanuel. She managed to feud almost equally with two influential unions that hold starkly different political views: the Chicago Teachers Union, which is left-wing and backed by Johnson, and the city's police union, the Fraternal Order of Police, which is headed by a proud Donald Trump supporter. Was Lightfoot's time in office marred with difficulties that were beyond her control, or was her time as the mayor of Chicago one of incompetence? Was her gender and race a factor in a racial polarizing city like Chicago? To help us understand this, we brought in friend of show and friend in real life, a guy that has actually helped me out on this show so I could actually take a vacation. And I got to hang out with a few months ago in LA. Please welcome Chicago's own Kenzo Shibata.
Good evening, gentlemen.
What up, man?
Kenzo Shibata.
How's it going, Pascal? Jason?
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. And Jason and I got to hang out not too long ago when I was out in LA for winter break with my son. We got to hang out and have a couple Coca-Colas and talk about music and talk shit, and politics, life.
We did have a couple of Coca-Colas. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think people think it's a joke. It's like, no.
Yeah, he doesn't drink and I don't drink much at all.
So it was just two of the nerdiest dudes ever you can imagine in downtown LA.
Yeah, and this was like New Year's weekend or so, and the bartender was like, I'm not even going to charge you guys.
Yeah, it's just...
I love that.
You can see the dad stress in our eyes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, my son was sleeping at that point, and I'm like, I got to sneak downstairs and have some adult time.
In all fairness, Kenzo's son's a little older. We don't want you thinking he left an infant.
Yeah.
But we did have a fun conversation. We really were talking politics, and we're talking Chicago politics as well.
Yeah.
Kenzo, for those that don't know, is part of the Chicago Teachers Union. You've been a teacher for how many years? 21.
Well, I started my teaching career in 2003, but then I took a long hiatus of about 8 years working for the Chicago Teachers Union, and then later for the state federation, the Illinois Federation of Teachers, which is the state federation over CTU. Returned to the classroom about 4 years ago, just in time for our 2019 strike. And I was on the bargaining team for that. Didn't get to meet Lori Lightfoot herself, but got to meet her minions, and awful people. But then, I'm teaching again.
Not a fan of Lori Lightfoot. From her walking in the door in office, has always had something to say. You're back. Are you back on social media?
Well, okay. So interestingly enough, I went back on Twitter. And Elon deleted my account, like out of nowhere. Actually, I was locked out of my account out of nowhere. I was punching in my password, and it kept saying it wasn't working. So I reported it as a problem to Twitter, and then that was just nuked. And then I made sure just to kind of sit on it for a while, just to refresh, to make sure that no one else would steal my name when it became available again. So I have it again. I don't have any followers. I had 18,000 when it got merged.
Well, I follow you. I do. I found you the other day. I forget. I think I wanted you to be part of this silly thing I'm doing on Twitter that gets my mind off all the depressing shit we talk about. I'm doing a tournament called March Radness, and
Nice.
it's the tournament for 80s movie soundtrack tape deck supremacy.
Okay.
And movies are battling each other.
And this is a Twitter thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I have an account now.
It
It sounds like right up my alley.
Yes, it's definitely somewhere to go to get your mind off things. My neighbor and good friend had a debate the other night with that guy Haas. So it was a great place to go get our mind off a bunch of
I know just enough about Haas to know I don't want to know anything else about him.
That's all you need to know. But back to serious matters. What was Chicago like before Lori Lightfoot? Can you set the stage for how this woman comes to power? Because usually I feel like there's a story beforehand. We can't just talk about Lori in a vacuum. I think there's a scene that needs to be set here.
2019 was like the most anti-machine, incumbency years that I had ever experienced in Chicago. So what that meant in 2019 is we elected about a dozen socialists to city council. That was a good thing. But then there wasn't at that point, any kind of like movement candidate running for mayor. So Lori Lightfoot was completely unknown. I would say, a big, help for her, at least at that particular political moment, was she ticked off all of the right boxes. First Black female gay mayor of Chicago. And she had a pretty progressive platform. Her education platform there was very little daylight between hers and the Chicago teachers unions. And she was all about police accountability. She was supporting a very strict version of the police accountability law that was eventually passed. A very watered down version was actually passed, but she supported the initial one. And so no one really supported her as far as like the left in Chicago, because she was a prosecutor. And she was a partner for Mayor Brown, which is a corporate law firm, one of the bad people. And so no one wanted to just support her. But then when she eventually did win, the attitude I know within the teachers union was, well, let's try to work with her. She ran on a platform that's close to ours. Maybe she is moving left. At least, at that point we had no choice but to at least kind of take her in good faith. And she immediately screwed us with refusing to negotiate a strong contract, refusing to negotiate a contract that actually held to her own campaign promises. She promised raises. She promised a counselor, a social worker, and a psychologist in every school building. Like I said, it was almost the exact same planks that the Chicago Teachers Union was pushing any mayoral candidate to support. And well, she said no to all of those things. And he had this general misunderstanding of how union negotiation should even go. I was on the union bargaining team. I'm a rank and file teacher. And so I didn't get to see her at all in these negotiations. She didn't show up at all. Chicago is somewhat unique in that the mayor runs the schools. We don't have a separate entity, and the mayor appoints our entire school board. And then the school board hires the people who bargain the contract on management side. So they kept reporting back to us like, the mayor won't budge on this, that, and the other thing. And she forced us out on a long strike that we, intentionally did not set out to do. We thought, someone that was running on a platform that was the same as our demands, we weren't going to have to strike this time. And so she pushed us into a 5-year contract. We were able to hold her to some of her promises. We, are slowly phasing in those care workers in every school building. One of the things though that is ridiculous is the fact that we're phasing them in and not getting them outright is because of what the mayor's team was pushing for. She also screwed us out of paying us for all the days we were out for strike. We were out 11 days. And typically, you make up those days as a service to the students, and you get paid a wage because, you should get paid for your labor. And she refused to have allow the students to make up all the days, and then also docked us that pay. So yeah, even on our first contract, we got a little ding to our paychecks, even though we negotiated a raise. So everything she's done has been in bad faith. She even went so far as, this is a supposed progressive, was defending the Columbus statue. Even though it would have been a very easy W for her. with any progressives in the city was to support the taking down of the Columbus statue downtown. That groups are, asking to have taken down. She stood up with the, basically the police, who were big staunch proponents of keeping the statue up. This was, famously where a young 18-year-old protester had her front teeth all knocked out by police, who were protecting the statue. So she even like very easy wins she could have scored with progressive, she just refused to, and that's why she lost.
Jesus. Pascal, do you want to add something?
It's interesting. I remember when Lori Lightfoot was elected, and one of the first people I talked to was Cedric Johnson, who was teaching in Chicago at the time. And he we were talking about how she was being celebrated in certain segments of the left on purely identitarian grounds that, first black woman, first gay, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, man, these people are so comical because she was disproportionately supported by districts in Chicago where police live. And this is what he told me when she got elected the first time. I was like, are you serious? He was like, yeah, man. Cops really liked her because she was a prosecutor. She's connected to the big law firms, the pro-growth, big corporate interests in Chicago, all connected to her or whatnot. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So, I had been watching her political career. And, at the time when, my history of understanding Chicago politics comes from a lot from Bruce Dixon, who was my mentor, who was from Chicago, and a lot of reading that I had done and understanding the importance of Chicago because it's in a state where it has a high number. Illinois has a high number of electoral votes, it's like 20 electoral votes. And if it was not for Chicago, it would be a red state. So pretty much Chicago is very important to the Democratic Party, and it always has been. So what's really interesting to me is that the Chicago machine, can you talk about how the Chicago machine pretty much maintains a stronghold on municipal politics and why anyone who goes against the machine pretty much is persona non grata in terms of achieving anything? Can you give us some history about what it is, what it means, and how it works?
Well, the interesting thing was, so back in the old Mayor Daley's time, Mayor
Daley Senior.
Mayor Daley Senior, that was at the peak of the machine. The machine really ran the city, and that was a political machine where it was all about just doling out jobs. If you ran the local Democratic committee, you had more power than a lot of elected officials. In fact, basically, if you were the committeeman, which was an internal Democratic Party office in the city, you pretty much got to choose who the alderman was, because you're the one who has the organization in the streets who get votes for you. And then you get to have the alderman pretty much, you turn out your people for that alderman. And then, that's where jobs are doled out. And, at the height of the machine's power, that was, the trash collectors, the people, the streets and sanitation people, through teachers and people who worked downtown in the city hall, like any kind of city job, there was some sort of connection to the machine. So you were turning out votes, you were bundling cash for the Chicago machine, and then the mayor, all the power just went straight up to the mayor from there on out. And the city was just completely controlled by the Democratic Party, to the point where the Democratic Party was determining, Congress seats out in the suburbs. Like Dan Rostenkowski famously was the corrupt congressman for a suburban district, but lived in the city because there was no residential requirement. But he ran the machine, he ran his section of the machine so well, he was able to give himself that seat. And city politics all ran on that. And that was through Daley. In his successor, though, unfortunately, was kind of a Peter principled guy who worked his way up the machine because he was good at internal politics but could not run the city. famously, Michael Bilandic at the time, that mayor, could not get the streets cleaned during a blizzard, and that cost him the election. Very similarly to the situation where Lori Lightfoot snuck in, we had the first female mayor, Jane Byrne, another one-term mayor, come in, and she was a disaster. She did extremely poorly. She was one of those progressives who, as soon as she got into office, realized that, being progressive was not going to allow her to get anything done, and she didn't have a machine behind her, so she acquiesced to the machine very quickly. They never fully embraced her, but they certainly rather had her than a true progressive. And then this allowed for all of the the progressive and grassroots organizations, labor unions, all to come together, and that led to I'm really simplifying this, the election of Mayor Harold Washington, the first Black mayor of Chicago. Truly a progressive grassroots candidate. Although he was a more traditional candidate who got some power through the machine when he was a congressman in Chicago, for Illinois, his district being in Chicago. But it was a progressive grassroots coalition that got him elected, one that united the north and the south sides of the city, which were politically divided, from the beginning of the city, and all sorts of like very disparate interests. And unfortunately, he died in office. Um, there was no there was no plan B at that point, and that's how Mayor Daley's son snuck in. And what he did was he was able to tie together the remnants of the machine that still existed at that time with business interests. He was like his thing was pinstripe patronage. So not all the money at that point or jobs were kept in the city. A lot of that money then started becoming privatized. So then consultants could do some of the city services, and that led to a more of a neoliberal machine under Daley, who held a tight vice grip on the city until he decided to retire. Rahm Emanuel became his heir apparent, and at that point, the traditional street machine, had died out in all but a few districts. What Rahm was able to do was really, through like shock and awe with his money and his political connections, just through sheer force, win overwhelmingly, one election. And then, he was actually pushed into a runoff during his reelection by Chuy Garcia, who ran again this time. But yeah, Rahm didn't have the same kind of street level machine, and that led to, in 2019, some openings for progressives, and unfortunately some non-progressives who painted themselves as such.
That's a really great encapsulation of a lot of years of history.
I think you threw about 50 years in that like 10-minute rant. I love it. I do want to examine. Well, there's a reason why I had reached out to you. It's not just because we're friends. It's because you're extremely knowledgeable on this stuff, and sometimes I get sad that you are not a louder voice in this space. It needs a lot of clarity that you're putting forth right now. But I want to talk a little bit about Harold Washington, and I had set aside some talking points / questions, and the article, which you are not the biggest fan of, and that's fine. I just wanted to find something that gives us a brief overview on Lori Lightfoot's term. It says that she was facing some obstacles that were beyond her, right? A lot of first-term people usually are facing obstacles that are beyond them. And I sent us, everybody participating in the show, a piece from 1986 by Manning Marable when he was writing about Harold Washington's second run in office before he passes, kind of comparing Harold Washington and a lot of these first-term black mayors to leaders of countries that were finally free of European rule, about how pretty much everything was stripped from these countries and they had to start from scratch, and it was, you know, how difficult it was. And giving context, because we always look at especially African nations as these backwards places where these people just can't get right. And a lot of these mayors, you know, and Cedric Johnson talks about this so brilliantly in his book, From Revolutionaries to Race Leaders, were walking into situations where these cities were just stripped of municipal budgets. They were, you know, facing bankruptcy. And they were left with this kind of surplus labor of a black population. You know, places like Detroit where manufacturing started to leave. Gary, Indiana. I can't remember where some more early black mayors were. You probably know,
DC.
Pastor. What'd you say?
DC.
Oh, yeah, DC.
DC, New York in the 80s, LA, Atlanta.
Of course, the
Gary.
results were different for everyone, right? Tom Bradley had a little better of a run until the early 90s than, you know, maybe some of the others. But that being said, was the cabinet bare for Lori Lightfoot when she walks in the door? Is she bombarded with COVID? Is the city so strapped that she doesn't know how to handle the crime problem? Can you talk a little bit about how you think the handling of the shelter in place was during Lightfoot's time?
Oh yeah, she was given a shitty hand as well. The problem was anytime anyone, you know, from the left or progressive side of Chicago tried to like reach out and help her, she just said no. Like she did not understand that, and this might not even be an ideological thing, it might just be a personality thing, I think. She just won't work with anyone. She has to like be the boss, and to run a city and run so many departments that do so many like very different things, like no one could do all of that. Like the fact that the mayor's office still run the schools, that's just ridiculous. You know, the schools, the sewers actually are run by a democratically elected board. So, you know, we run elections for people who run the sewers, but not for the people who run the schools. And the mayor is supposed to make all these decisions. And so she was left with a lot of responsibility, and all of this fell, you know, all of these departments were under a lot of disrepair. However, you know, the CTU, one of the things we said was, well, you also, Lori Lightfoot, ran on the idea of an elected school board and having, you know, the city, or the mayor's office no longer run the schools. And then she's like, no, I'm not going to support that idea anymore. And she even lobbied, you know, against us when we were going down there. So we're having a slowly phased in elected school board. But, you know, that's just one example of like all these agencies saying, you know, we want to help, you know, the union saying, you know, we represent the workers who do this work. Let's work together. So, you know, we can fix Rom's mess. And she just, you know, said absolutely not. So every single problem she was left with, she's exacerbated. You know, police brutality got worse under her watch, and that was one of the things that she ran under. And she stopped supporting this CPAC, which was, you know, bad acronym for it, but it was a more harder on the cops police accountability bill than what actually got passed than she supported. And that, you know, these problems haven't been abated at all. She's just on every single thing. When COVID relief, when the federal government offered COVID relief, she actually refused some of it. She fought the teachers union every time we said, oh, maybe for 2 weeks we should, while there's a surge going on in COVID, go back to online teaching. This is one way of us helping the city, you know, mitigate this problem. She said no to that. And so, because she had no ideas on her own, and anyone who came up to her with a different idea, she would just immediately say no to. So a lot of unforced errors on her part, I think. Like she definitely, you know, came to the city. with a raw deal, but just made it worse.
So, go ahead, Pascal.
I wanted to ask you in terms of the the kind of 800-pound gorilla in the room about Chicago politics to me is always the black political class, because people always assume that black people. I mean, there's a large, very poor, working class community in Chicago, but Chicago has a very old, established black political class that, if you read Preston Smith's Racial Democracy in the Black Metropolis, he talks about how, the black political class in Chicago, even during Jim Crow in the 40s and 50s, was negotiating to protect their class interests in terms of housing against poor and working class blacks in that city. So the question I want to ask is that how exactly do the mayors of Chicago, if you have the experience or knowledge base, how do they deal with and negotiate with the black political class in terms of assuring either support by the black voter turnout or in terms of doling out patronage, which we famously on this show call fatback and biscuits? How exactly does that end up working in terms of the realpolitik of Chicago politics?
Well, this was something that both dailies were pretty savvy with, and as well as Rahm Emanuel was really Mayor Daley worked a lot with ministers of big churches, but also he made sure he had relationships with storefront church ministers as well, and they were very aware of they had to be able to give jobs out, and that was how they were able to keep their power in the neighborhoods, black, white neighborhoods, all neighborhoods at that point. At one point, they even had to keep track of all the different what they called white ethnic neighborhoods, because Poles and Irish didn't always see themselves as being having.
You guys are kind of like Boston. I think you need to admit that, Kenzo. Just admit that Chicago is kind of like Boston, and that you guys have very specific racism, where white people hate white people. Would you agree, Pascal?
I think that's a northeastern phenomenon. I think it's an urban ethnic phenomenon of the North, wherever Chicago.
Kenzo's trying to act like he's not an aberration himself.
Oh, wow. Ouch.
But we know in Chicago you can see white people fight white people.
Not like it used to be. And I think part of that is the suburban, because the different white ethnic groups moved to different suburbs. So maybe that's all happening out in the suburbs. But I think it was maybe under Harold Washington's term that the white people were like, you know what? We're all white here, guys. I mean, the white coalition ran a Jewish guy, Bernie Epton, against Washington. Yes, that's how serious they were about, like, we're all white now, okay?
It's a double entendre, right?
Like the tagline for Bernie Epton's campaign was "Before it's too late." So they always wanted to say, "Vote Epton before it's too late."
And then it was a picture of you.
Nice.
Of course,
I got 3 followers on
Japanese.
Your son will have 3 followers, and it'll be a mongrel. For those listening, Kenzo is not white. He's a very well-spoken Asian man.
An asset to my community.
All right, let's get on point here. Sorry,
but Lightfoot, she politically schizophrenic. Politically, I don't think she was grounded in any analysis at all of how she had to approach the city. So she was very just scattershot. One of the things that she said that was really odd was during that whole controversy with the Christopher Columbus statue, and the Italian groups were upset because they wanted to keep it. This was when Lori Lightfoot said in a Zoom meeting that she had a bigger dick than the Italians, that she had the biggest dick in Chicago. And I remember seeing a meme of that and just thinking, okay, this is just like absurdist humor, isn't it? And then I did a Google search. I'm like, no, she actually said that to a head of the park districts about this controversy, because she was saying that, the Italians are, flexing their muscle, and she's got a bigger dick than they do, apparently.
She literally said that.
Yeah, it was corroborated, and it is actually part of a lawsuit. This park district's employee sued her, I believe, about this meeting. She berated him, where she was talking about how big her dick is, and it's bigger than the Italians.
Wow.
There's a black woman here with a protruding clitoris that's talking about my penis.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know who she felt like the audience, who she felt she was
Right.
serving by saying something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she has not embraced, I'd say, the black political class, the progressive political class, or even the right-wing political class in any way. Right-wing, the Fraternal Order of Police. The cops loved her, and now they hated her. So she just seems to be all over the place.
That's
With their big dick.
the comments in the chat. Someone said a real Italian just would have whipped it out. Is this the cannoli here? Is this the cannoli you're talking about? Hey, and his spook over here says she's got a bigger all of them pots than me.
My God.
Hey, I got some black girl magic for you, honey.
Alrighty then.
Fictional Italian man in Chicago.
Yeah, New York Italian man.
New York
It's not even
Italian
our
man.
fault. She actually said this.
Like, Lori Lightfoot, every time I saw her, she always looked like she wants to say, I'm tired of these niggas.
I mean, every time I saw her, she looked like a character from Beetlejuice. I mean, that was my
Not right. Not right.
She definitely looks very sad in the thumbnail.
She looks very sad at them. Well, she just lost her job. She got clean shit out.
So let me ask you a question. How exactly did she go so long without being just totally just berated by activist groups in Chicago overall? Like, how was she able to even tread water for one term without people just absolutely? I mean, because I remember when Rahm Emanuel was mayor, and the tension in the city was as transparent on a regular basis from what you read in the news, and based on the level of seeming just kind of incompetence or lack of political savvy that Lightfoot has, how does she go through the motions without having people just challenge her daily? Like, what are you doing?
She had a very the media were very kind to her for a very long time. It wasn't until maybe the last year or so where there are even our local media were just like, you need to actually like attend press conferences and answer our questions. It was almost like they would give her an inch and she would take a mile every single time. And so they were just throwing her softballs. In fact, actually the national media loved her. MSNBC, the progressive media, they would have her on, when we were negotiating a contract with her, MSNBC had her on just to say, her entire talking points, and didn't have anyone from the union on. So she had a lot of support there. She had a lot of support from what are called the Lakefront liberals, mainly white folks, liberals who, they like her identity politics, and, they would, run cover for her a lot. But definitely there was a lot of animosity between her and progressives and the left in Chicago. But, because I think the media were so kind, they just didn't tell our side at all. The protests, though, were not the same size or magnitude than those under Rahm. But I also do think part of that is because of COVID. We were tired, and for a good year or so, people weren't really doing in-person protests. So I think a lot of folks put that into electoral energy this time around, and that's how we got rid of her.
So, how do you think she handled the what do we call it now? George Floyd summer. Is that? I don't want to say that. That kind of seems like it's being a little belittling. What do we call it? The protests, the George Floyd protests. How do you think she handled the George
Well,
Floyd
the
protests?
the first unforced error she made was she was becoming kind of a social media star about her COVID response for some reason. I think her team just made really good memes and or very viral memes. Where it was like the whole thing was like her with her arms crossed, wearing a mask, basically saying like I'm tough and I'm going to make you social distance, even though she was really lax on the restrictions even from the beginning. Um, she posted a meme, "Stay at home." This was right after the George Floyd protest kicked into high gear.
Mhm.
So that
And
was
how
a
bad
very
did it
good
get?
one.
How bad did it get in your hood? Was it like buildings getting destroyed, or was it just a lot of just people in the streets?
A lot of people in the streets, mainly. Most of the action really is downtown, in Chicago. Like everyone converges downtown for the big protests.
Mhm.
Protests don't often happen in the neighborhoods. Um, and a lot of that is because that's where all the municipal buildings are and city hall and any corporation that we might be marching on, is downtown. And then it's accessible from public transportation from every region of the city. Um, so yeah, there were a lot of protests here. She, much like, posting that meme of just stay home,
Mhm.
which I don't think had anything to do with the protest. It was just a staffer not knowing now was, couldn't read the room. Um, she, didn't, she didn't do anything, to help matters, during some of the protests. In fact, downtown, she had the, drawbridges raised, basically locking or kettling protesters downtown, to be arrested. So the police kind of ran things during these protests, and so that was a lot of the animus against her started bubbling up because of that. She was not speaking, and she was speaking more with her actions and policy, than anything else. Which was interesting though, because the Democratic Party for a little while at least, the national one thought of her as like a darling, because when they had one of the nights of the DNC, they had George Floyd's family on, to talk about, not police brutality, but whatever, the violence, the hate, whatever, the very vague problem that the Democrats want to paint it as. And they had Lori Lightfoot on this panel, um, which that lit up Chicago social media that night. Just like, what the hell is she doing? Why are they putting her up on that stage? And just like, yeah, the Democrats.
And I want to ask you another question. But, we're getting up on the hour, and we can go a little longer because we're not going to do a champagne room tonight because it's movie night tomorrow on
Nice.
TIR. Uh, Crime and violence in the city is a big issue, and we kind of skated around that this whole conversation. Shootings are happening, people are dying. Chicago's dangerous. Housing's a problem. That Harold Washington piece, he was trying to erect new housing in his time in office with less of a budget. We talk about it on this show all the time. There's not a lot of federal money that states get. I don't know how much money Illinois as a state gets because most of the population is in Chicago. It's a decent sized state.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people live in Davenport. Not a lot of people live in Rockford. But seriously, I would love to hear your take on her handling and just crime in general in Chicago and how it's handled and dealing with the police. And go off. I mean, look, go off. It's not like I'm going to cut you off at an hour. Go off.
It's well, one of the things about Chicago that the media don't get right at all is the fact that because it is such a segregated city in every way, economically, racially, crime is really is relegated to only portions of the city. So there are enough people in the city that are comfortable enough that they don't really care to do much about it. Like Lori Lightfoot lives in Logan Square, which is an extremely gentrified neighborhood, one that was pretty working class just maybe 15, 20 years ago. She sends her kid to a private school.
Mhm.
So even though, the kid might experience some, going to school with poor and working class kids, if she went to the public school, she's completely insulated from what's actually happening in Chicago. And so, I'm sorry, in the rest of the city. Um, so, and that's not just her, it's like a lot of her supporters too. Um, just they aren't doing a good job. Interestingly though, if you look at I don't have a copy of the map right now, but I did see one recently that showed how different neighborhoods went, and neither Paul Vallis nor Brandon Johnson, who are going to be in the runoff, captured many of the South Side uh, districts and neighborhoods. So that's going to be an interesting battleground, and that's a portion of the city where unfortunately a lot of the crime happens there in the West Side. Just the places that have the least amount of money. And so that is going to be an interesting fight to watch because Brandon Johnson is not for completely defunding the police, but he is for police accountability in a real way. Paul Vallis was supported by the Fraternal Order of Police. He's gone on record as saying, he's an anti-CRT guy, and I don't want to unpack that. But you know what I'm saying? He's doing that kind of messaging there of, we can't have these kids learning Black history. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it is. And, as far as defunding the police, that is something that is not clearly among racial lines either. A lot of Black folks and brown folks in Chicago don't want us to defund the police. They
Let
see
me
more police as being safety.
safe, and a good amount of Black people. If you have a high school education, you can be a six-figure employee as a police officer
Mm.
and have a union job. What is your take on that? What does police accountability mean post Laquan McDonald?
Well, the Laquan McDonald situation was so interesting because there were so many layers of Chicago to it. Like the Burger King where he was murdered was also a scene where a alderman, allegedly, I will say allegedly, Ed Burke was shaking down that Burger King they wanted to expand their parking lot, and he was shaking them down for political contributions, allegedly, to get that done. The exact same place where Laquan McDonald was murdered, and he was murdered by the police. Uh, they police officer pretty much got away with it. No substantial punishment at all. And Mayor Rahm Emanuel, because he wanted to be reelected, had the state's attorney hide the tape essentially from the media until after he was getting reelected.
Mhm.
So it's not just the police that are involved in police corruption in the city too. So it's accountability on multiple levels that we need. And right now the police have a tremendous amount of power in the city, and the head of the police union being seen holding up QAnon posters at rallies. That's another layer of insanity that we have to these politics now, is that there is a far right wing in the city that do support the police wholeheartedly, and they will in substantial ways support our police officers.
Is it just because of the fear of violence? I mean, people love bringing out statistics of Chicago gun violence. Spike Lee did one of Toussaint's favorite movies, Chirac. Pascal didn't even laugh. He was like, "Fuck that movie." Like, is that kind of the perfect propaganda? Would you say something like Chirac for this fear and this feeling of need for a larger police force? I mean, granted, there is real deal violence in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's fear. I mean, like, I guess these things are not unrelated, but fear of white neighborhoods becoming not white, for sure. Like, if you look at the city of Chicago, you could fold it in half, and the all white neighborhoods on the far northwest and far southwest side, they touch each other. If you folded a map in half, it's almost like, the there's this, because we have a residency requirement for our municipal workers, including cops, firefighters, and teachers. There's these pockets of the city where all the police officers live, that are so close to the suburbs that they shop in the suburbs, they share services with the suburbs, but they have to live within the city limits. Keeping those neighborhoods very white is also a big fear, or is a big push that I think these folks have, because even though gentrification is happening everywhere, if you live in some of these gentrifying areas that are more in the central parts of the city, you have to have neighbors that don't look like you, and the police want to make sure, and the people that are closest to them, that they have neighbors that look just like them.
Pascal?
How does this actually translate in terms of the day-to-day life, in terms of the racial politics of Chicago? Because one of the things you always hear about, it's like, Chicago is a segregated city, it's so racially hostile, so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. And I've known, even just reading that article that Jason shared with us about Harold Washington, about the reaction the Chicago police had when Washington was being elected as mayor. They were basically saying, like, pretty much like, the baboons are taking over the streets, kind of thing. It was the level of racial, the level of racial hostility,
Mr. Baboon.
And I remember visiting Chicago one time in the '90s, and I was like, man, this town is, number one, it's cold as hell, and number two, it's really physically segregated. And how does that influence the political viability of these two candidates when we have Valles, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, the guy Valles, who's running what seems to be a very overtly reactionary kind of racial dog whistle type campaign, and you have the other candidate, I believe his name is Johnson, who was kind of like a progressive, kind of left of Lori Lightfoot. How does that translate in terms of the way they're perceived in the body politic?
It's going to be really interesting to see, because neither of them really captured South Side neighborhoods. Paul Vallis he's someone that at one point did have a lot of respect in the city, because he was he's close to Mayor Daley. It did seem like he had that racist dog whistle campaign this time around, which is not really his MO. And Brandon, teacher, but also one of the things that the media are like wanting to paint him as is either being too far left, or like too aligned with the unions. That's one of the things that's been a real double standard with the media here, at least, is that none of the media have been questioning the Fraternal Order of Police's ties to Vallis, or the support of Vallis. But Brandon Johnson keeps getting asked, like, how do you differ at all from the views of the Chicago Teachers Union? And he answers it perfectly. He says, I also support strong public schools and strong neighborhoods for all. And it's like the media really are painting the unions as a public interest, whereas the police or the business community not so much. So as far as this outcome for this election, I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I honestly, I have to plead a bit of ignorance here.
Really?
I wanted to know who to put my money on. Damn. It's $50 burning a hole in my pocket.
But there are just vacuums. Like there are whole neighborhoods in the city that didn't support either of them. So it's really going to be about, a lot of it's going to be about ground game right now. I hope more about ground game than media, because Vallis has, a lot of money on his side.
We saw that didn't work in LA.
That's true.
That wasn't just money. That was also like establishment. I've been in Los Angeles for decades, giving money to you brown people guy that beat or that lost to Karen Bass. So that's something to keep in mind. I think ground game means something. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Tucson.
Thank you. Brandon Johnson was virtually unknown just a little while ago. Mm-hmm. That shows a lot of promise, doesn't it?
I think so. For sure. He was definitely unknown at the very beginning. He was just a few years ago a school teacher. I actually worked with him at the Chicago Teachers Union. He was an organizer. While I was working in the communications department. Wow. It just kind of dawned on me that I may have worked with the next mayor of Chicago. Sends his kids to public schools. And then he ran for county commissioner, won kind of narrowly. That was a lot of late nights and like just really hitting the ground, and a lot of ground game there. He became a county commissioner. From there, he raised his profile, and then all of the unions, pretty much, at least all of the service unions in the city, supported him, sent out folks for him. The progressive alderman and the socialist alderman also, they supported him. They, knocked on doors, not just for their own candidate for alderman, but also for Johnson. So he's got this kind of, I don't want to say scrappy, but just like all in, every progressive who wants to see a better city come together and support. So this is going to be an interesting thing to watch, because for Johnson's side, we're going to have to just build the ground troops for the most part, because the money is not going. Money's there, but it's the kind of money that Vallis can raise is probably not. One thing that was a very big boon to Johnson's campaign was that the American Federation of Teachers kicked in $1 million. Our, national parent union. That's, that's nothing to sneeze at. But Vallis, the business interests in the city know that they have a big ally in him.
Are we waiting for the other shoe to drop with Chuy Garcia, who he's going to back?
It would be, Chuy did support some really awful, almost right-wing candidates for alderman. Any alderman that didn't support him, he didn't support. So like Rosana Rodriguez, who's this amazing socialist alderwoman in the 33rd ward, Chuy supported her machine right-wing supported opponent. So he's already drawing some ire from the progressives in the city. And so I don't know how much stock. I guess in the 4th district, congressional district, he had some stock if he threw his support one way or the other, but it would almost be just the end of him if he were to, or just him going a full like Luis Gutierrez if he were to support Vallis. I guess that's a possibility too.
You want to add something, Pascal?
No, I think this has been a very, very good conversation with Kenzo, demonstrating the depth of understanding he has of Chicago politics, historically and present. And we're definitely going to be watching for this runoff, which is early April, as a matter of fact.
Early April, yeah.
We have to have you
back. Which would be great, because our first election is always like the coldest day in Chicago. It's the last day of February, or the last week of February. So we only got 33% turnout. Like turnout was abysmal. So that's also going to be an interesting thing to watch is if on April 4th we're able to turn out more than we were in February.
What date is the 4th, Tucson? Do you have a calendar in front of you?
Yeah, let me have a look.
It's King
April
Assassin.
4th, it's a Tuesday.
It's King Assassination Day.
That's what you call it? We got to find a better name.
That's the day King was assassinated.
Yeah, but it just sounds just like George Floyd's summer. It just sounds like Hot Girl Summer, and that just doesn't sound good.
Hot Girl
So King
Summer.
Assassination Day sounds like you're supposed to have a barbecue, and that doesn't sound right. We have to call it something more, somber.
Non-cookout MLK Day. I don't know.
I watched, speaking of MLK, I rewatched when Cuba and them were here. I was watching the Boondocks, and I showed Cuba's wife the Boondocks, which blew her mind. She was just like, where has this show been my whole life, right? And we're sitting there watching the Boondocks, and we watched the Martin Luther King episode. And then everybody left, and I watched it again. And I was like, I don't know if this is part of the joke, and the only way we can know is if we ever get what's his name again? Aaron
Magruder.
Aaron Magruder. Because I would love to know. And if it is, this man is a genius. But his MLK is the most pull up your pants MFer ever. And that whole show is about this alternate world where MLK just racially scolds people.
Yeah. There's a lot of respectability politics in the Boondocks.
That whole episode. And I just want to know if that's the joke that none of us get. Because at the end of that episode, if you remember, the world changes. Because MLK basically said, pull up your pants. And all the basketball players pull up their pants and do all this stuff. And then all the black people revolt. And the revolution happened. Because pants were pulled up. I really want to know if that was the joke.
It's gotta be. It was so heavy-handed.
So heavy-handed.
There's a lot. If you watch the Boondocks and you have watched Aaron Magruder's interviews, there's a lot of respectability kind of aggressive stuff in there.
You really think that's what it was about? Kind of like Negroes? I mean, the when Martin Luther King can't get into his own party, that was the funniest thing ever. We ain't getting in with them shoes. I want to know. There was also stuff that wasn't respect. Like, dude, his whole take on hip hop, watching modern hip hop and look at when we read those news headlines, that's an episode of the Boondocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whose mom says she was the throat goat?
FBD Duck.
Don't know what any of that means. These are all rap names because this is a real thing.
Oh yeah, sixth grade.
He's from Chicago.
I learn all the names, and like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but I'm still like, I'm into Chief Keef, and like, he hit the scene 10 years ago. Like, the kids are telling me about these names, and I'm like, I don't know these people. It's not even. You could be Chicago, you could be into hip hop, but once you're old, you're old.
Yeah, and I'm not. You know what? I'm not supposed to know those names, and that's okay.
You telling me you don't know Dirk?
I know Dirk. I know who he is, but yeah, I couldn't
Diggler?
Lil Durk.
Lil Durk.
Lil Durk
I
Diggler?
know everyone's Lil something. What is Lil?
His father is Big Dirk.
Is his father a rapper?
No, he used to work for like Larry Hoover or some shit.
Really? Everybody's dad used to be a drug dealer. My dad was the biggest drug dealer in this hood. What are you talking about? My mama house?
One funny thing about being like Jewish and from Chicago is like we all have a story about one of our uncles or great uncles being one of Al Capone's either lawyers or accountants. In my family, it was an accountant. And you grow up thinking that's the coolest story. And then, I didn't grow up around a lot of Jews. But then when I got older, I met some like in college, and they're like, no, my uncle too. And like, well, I mean, and then we just kind of like, oh, well, I'm sure he had a lot of lawyers and attorneys and accountants. But
Didn't
yeah,
he get
that's
taken
the
down for
legend.
taxes?
What was that?
Didn't he get taken down for
Yeah,
taxes?
yeah.
My uncle must have been a
was
bad
shit.
accountant.
Bad accountants. Oops, forgot to put in your taxes. Forgot to put in your taxes this year. Whoops.
At least he wasn't his urologist.
Nice. Al Capone's urologist.
Kenzo, your great uncle Mort was one of Al Capone's accountants. Is that why I'm bad at math, Dad? Telling me this shit is fucking hereditary. Oh, Tucson, if I do a De La Soul stream, are you going to come with me, or are you busy in the morning?
Oh, in the morning. I might as well just take tomorrow off. I just want my time. Maybe. But what are you considering morning?
Oh, that's right. My morning is your afternoon. And you
Right.
people wake up early too. Jesus Christ.
Do we? Do we?
Yeah. Yeah. Like 5 a.m. My shit's going off. I'm like, damn, these niggas is up. Steve says, yo, we should go watch Tariq Nasheed after this. He's talking about Lori.
Oh man.
What do you think Tariq Nasheed? JB says, I'm hearing Finkelstein voice telling Capone about his taxes.
Trying to get
Mr.
you some more
Capone.
Followers, by the way, Kenzo.
Thank you.
Mr. Capone, do you think we have an accounting problem here?
Count to 4.
Right.
Can you imagine Finkelstein just yelling at Al Capone about his taxes and identity politics?
Jesus.
Asking him why everybody's Italian.
Why is everyone Italian?
Oh my God. I'm trying to do a live event with Norm. So cross your fingers that we can get this thing done for April.
Nice.
It'll be huge. Kenzo, what do you have in the works before we sign off?
What do I have in the works right now is just finishing up this school year. I'm actually going back to school next year to get my master's in social work. My plan is to become a therapist, and I found this is it's probably the quickest route to do that. So I'll be doing that and then getting my licensure exam in about 3 years. And so career change for me. I taught off and on for 20 years, and it's ready to move on.
You're gonna give therapy to the gang members.
But only in a Norm Finkelstein voice.
Oh God.
All the Jew comes out of him when he's giving therapy.
Jesus.
Therapy
Like
and financial advice.
Old Eddie Murphy Jew in Coming to America at the barbershop.
Look here, Leon. You're never gonna get anywhere in life.
He remembers all the lines.
Oh God. That was Eddie Murphy's. What do you think? Okay, before we go, we have to say this. You guys are gonna get a little free champagne. Pascal, someone puts a gun to your head and they say, look, you need to tell me what's a better Eddie Murphy movie, Boomerang or Coming to America? Hammercocks, what's better?
Oh man, Boomerang.
No time to think.
Coming to America was funnier.
Kenzo.
Oh, Coming to America.
Oh, okay. Tucson.
Coming to America.
I'm the asshole. Boomerang.
Every year on my birthday. That's because you're extraordinarily heterosexual man. That's why. You're like a beyond the pale of heterosexuality. And that's why.
That's a good explanation.
I don't know what she's trying to say about me with that comment. So,
Because you've been in a frat, she thinks dicks have touched.
Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah, you were in a frat and I lived in a punk house. So yeah.
something mildly. A game of grab ass happened at least once or twice.
Oh, sure. I mean, skateboarders too. So
Yeah.
for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. There's somebody.
So much. Yeah.
Someone's accidentally tugged a chain.
Tug the chain.
So
Wow.
Dr. Claus says, Coming to America had John Amos in it. It did.
It
But
did.
Boomerang had John Witherspoon.
Ooh.
Who's the better John? Coordinate.
Mushroom belt. Mm-hmm.
Halle Berry is in Boomerang.
Nah.
Halle Berry becomes Halle Berry in Boomerang. Not Strictly Business. No, there's like 8 black people that remember Strictly Business. It's me and the 8 black people that were in it. Like no one. Like, guess why kids are just looking all confused? Pascal ain't seen Strictly Business.
I've seen
Years
Baps.
ago.
Good enough. I've seen
if you saw Baps, then you understand that scheduling of movie releases is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Because Halle Berry was coming off of what? Losing Isaiah?
Mm.
What was she coming off? She was coming off of a big movie, and then Babs came out. You're like, really? No one remembers Strictly Business. See, no one in the chat says they remember Strictly Business.
Good soundtrack.
Strictly Business. All those movies had good soundtracks. Tell me one 90s movie with colored folks in it that doesn't have a good soundtrack.
It's true. New Jack Swing.
Put on the Boomerang soundtrack.
Soundtrack.
That's Tony Braxton's first single.
That's right.
Love should have brought your ass home last night.
She meant it.
Boom, and she just pushes his head too.
Love should have brought your ass home last night.
The way the movie ends when the woman walks by and Halle Berry goes, "If you even turn your head." Born Center says Kenzo got more than one black friend if he watched back. I watched Sister Act 2 an ungodly amount of times because Lauryn Hill was in that movie.
Jason liked the black woman once.
Oh, wow.
One time. That's what Wyclef
One time.
Yeah.
Yo, that was a really dirty shot. Wow.
See, you hear that, ladies? That's who you have to be for Jason to like you. You have to be Lauryn Hill. Good luck with that.
Isn't she Haitian?
No, she's not.
No, she's Jamaican.
She's American.
Oh.
She's Jamaican American.
She's not Jamaican American.
I thought she was Haitian.
She got no man. Wyclef and Praz are Haitian.
Right.
She is not Haitian.
She's not.
Steve says Jason got a brown paper bag test.
Maybe. He has a paper bag in his pocket right now.
Brown paper bag, as long as it's from the Philippines.
He's got a manila envelope in his pocket.
She's saying I got a plastic bag from Ranch 99.
Kenzo's like, what did I get involved in? I just want to be a
I've
therapist.
been on before.
Jason only dates women that are Manny Pacquiao fans.
Specifically his politics.
Right?
Oh, that's mean.
It's funny, that we are on this subject because I stumbled on some weird picture of it was a picture of Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier, and they were laughing together, and I saw all of these comments by black women, and they were like, someone said, they must have been plotting on white women together. I was like, oh my god. I was like, there's like a whole comment thread of women like, both of them just were chasing white women. It was like they fought in the civil rights movement to chase white women. I was like,
My sister told me that.
I know
one
day my little black son can have a beautiful white woman with freckles come to the house.
I was like, yo, the hatred that was coming towards Sydney and Harry Belafonte in that thread was just a bit much. I was like, wow.
They fought in the civil rights movement to bang white girls.
Yep.
You'd be surprised how many people say something like that.
It's a popular sentiment, yeah.
Are you being serious?
Oh, there's a whole book that accuses the Black Panther Party about those guys, fighting power so they can get white women.
Aldrich Cleaver gave up the ghost.
Yeah, Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman makes that allegation.
So, when we gonna get a freedom?
Where the white women at?
He's in the house looking fine as hell with her pantaloons on.
Pantaloons.
If she walk by that window one more time, I refuse to believe that was even in the back of Harry Belafonte's mind.
Spoken but if it was, like a black man.
Wow.
Yes. You guys, all of a sudden, you guys are so innocent. Oh, no, they were talking about petunias. Yeah, okay.
Wow. Interesting.
Why can't they be talking about anything else? Yeah.
I can see Jim Brown trying to get you. I can see Jim Brown doing that.
Jim Brown?
You may know me as Jim Brown from the Gridiron, but I'm also Jim Brown from the Civil Rights Movement.
Jim Brown
was also like Jim Brown from the bedroom.
Jim Brown, Raquel Welch. I was like, you know what I did, right?
You may know me from the movie. What was the movie he was in? Called like Nigger Charles or something?
Oh gosh.
What was that movie called? I'm not making this up. He's in this movie. It's called like Nigger something.
I don't know, man.
Fun.
Can you look at Tucson before we go? Can you find that on the IMDb? I'm not making this up.
Not getting monetized. We know that for sure.
Enzo said the C word like 8 times. Once he said that, I was like, oh yeah, we lost this episode. He been off.
Lori Lightfoot's big dick isn't helping either.
True.
You could have said Lori Lightfoot whipped her dick out and spun it around and sang "It's Raining Men." And that would have been better than saying the C word.
Yikes.
Oh my God, man.
What was it? What Tucson? Can you find the movie? Do you see it?
I'm looking. I mean, so far, IMDb is like Jason is a lie. So let's see.
I know he was in a movie called Mandingo.
Jim Brown was not in Mandingo. That was Ken Norton who was in Mandingo.
That was Ken Norton in Mandingo. You sure that wasn't Jim Brown?
It's not Jim Brown.
Was Ken Norton in the nigger movie? It's a hard R.
Jason, man, what you in the N-word, dude?
It's a hard R. Tucson, are you looking up who was in nigger?
I'm looking.
And every black person shows pictures of me and Pascal.
Not seeing
The Legend of N-Word Charlie.
Okay.
I'm telling you. Was it Jim Brown?
Hang on.
I can hear them fingers typing. You go, girl. Black girl magic.
Oh, God.
Jim Brown. No, it was hold on. Fred Williamson. Was in this.
I knew it was a football playing Negro. Fred the Hammer.
Charlie with a Y.
And it's the N-word Charlie, right?
Roger Ebert.
Yeah, the Legend of Nigga Charlie. Yeah, that was a movie. I remember this movie.
Why do you remember it?
Blaxploitation. I'm kind of a blaxploitation
aficionado. You never saw Fly By Night, and that is the greatest blaxploitation movie ever. Before we go,
I saw Fly By Night.
before we go, I got to tell this story, Kenzo. I'm with Kenzo in LA. We're talking, right? And I'm like, dude, whatever you do, if you're still awake right now, you go in your hotel if your son's asleep and you watch this movie. I've had to watch it twice because I didn't think it was real. It's called and I get a message from Kenzo. I'm watching it, and this is insane. The Zionist scene in Fly By Night.
It was even wilder than you explained it. It literally made no sense. Came out of absolutely nowhere. This record executive guy just ranting about the virtues of Zionism during negotiating a contract with a rapper. Like,
who does that? Who would ever do that? I don't really care for you people and your politics. But you know what's great politics? Zionism. Steve says Jason's ancestors were on the Mayflower. He dropped that hard R with E.
Look at that. Jason with the hard
Derville
R.
Martin is in that movie, and it's called The Legend of N-Word Charlie.
Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars.
Word?
Yep.
Can you imagine the Roger Ebert review that he was doing with Gene Siskel talking about N-Word Charlie?
I'm still recovering from
you.
I'm still recovering from the fact that M. Toussaint believes that civil rights movement was thought so brothers can get white women.
I'm not saying I believe that. I'm saying I was told that.
Who told that to you? An angry black woman?
My sister told me that.
She wasn't even old enough to be there.
She wasn't. No, she wasn't. But she did tell me that you got to watch these dudes. Gotta watch these fools.
Hey, thank you, MDR. We appreciate that. The show did get demonetized. HG says TIR needs an N-word jar.
Yes, this is true.
Maybe that needs to be a sound effect every time you see it, like a
just change going into a jar. Yeah.
Well, we haven't done this in a while.
We coming for you, nigga.
Woo!
Jesus. Kenzo's like, I'm really happy for you, man. As long as you're happy, I'm happy, man.
And also before we go, Kenzo, what Slayer shirt is that?
Oh, Rain and Blood.
Let me see. Oh, the album cover. Oh, that's a good man.
Classics.
That's a good man. A slide whistle sound for the N-word. Yeah, maybe we should get a what could be a good code word?
What for what?
For in because we changed what did we call the chosen people? Half a Kenzo?
Oh,
European.
Haitian
European.
Yeah.
So Haitian Europeans, and what for the N-words? What can we say?
Yo, man, I don't even know, man.
We gotta think about that.
Well, okay, when we do this stream tomorrow, and you know, I'm not asking anyone to join me. If you don't want to join Pascal, I understand. We do a movie night tomorrow. We're gonna be running late. I'm going to play music until they cut it off, and I don't think they'll cut it off, but they definitely will demonetize it like they do the Champagne Room streams.
Mm-hmm.
So, just letting you know that this will be a. I want to do it. I'm excited. These songs are finally going to be available. You know, we were talking to Daniel Mate last Friday about De La Soul is Dead, and he was like, "Yeah, you can't find it anywhere. They took it down on YouTube." I was like, "I found it," and the link I sent him, right after I sent it to him, someone took that link down.
Yeah.
So it's like having this stuff because nobody's buying music anymore. Let's just be honest. Because even if you bought it, how are you going to play it? So
I mean, it's not the best deal. My brother's phone's just broken. He's like, I lost all my music. It's not
it's in the
it's not the best
cloud.
deal.
It's in the cloud.
Allegedly.
Allegedly in the
In the
cloud.
cloud. You gotta have your password.
Born Center says Pascal can't take Jason anywhere. I think we need to get a sound effect for N-word so we can just,
Not say it. It's gonna be mostly for
like
you.
skirt or something like that.
I just want to say two things, Kenzo. We've doubled your followers.
Ooh.
I want you
Thank
to know that. We're still working on it. Also, I want everyone to hit like. If you're listening to the audio version of this, please give us 5 stars wherever you're listening. It really helps us out.
Thank you very much. We changed the show back category wise, and we're moving back up in the category that we were in originally, and we will be in the top 20. I'll screenshot it for you.
Awesome.
We'll still be broke, but broke without. Shit, you may know me from
being broke with clout.
That's the new rich, is broke with clout.
That's
That's what's up.
that's N-word rich, I believe that's called.
Just can't avoid them, can you? Just can't. Yeah, Mayflower ass.
But I was right about the movie. There's a movie with the N-word in it. And Gene Siskel or Roger Ebert? Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars.
Roger Ebert. Oh, somebody bought us pizza. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
Look out.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you guys. Movie night tomorrow night. We'll be watching actually a really good movie, Deep Cover.
Yes, y'all.
But before we go, what's your favorite part of Deep Cover, Pascal?
My favorite part of Deep Cover is when Lawrence Fishburne is sitting down and he's getting broken down about how the drug business works. And Jeff Goldblum is like, yes, the laundress matters. The laundress matters.
All right.
So it's gonna be fun night, movie night. If you want to watch the movie with us, there's only one way: patreon.com/bitterlakepresents. Kenzo Shibata, thank you so much. There is a link to Kenzo's Twitter. Please follow him. I'm gonna tag you again on this tournament, March Radness tournament.
All right.
I'm sure you will have a lot to say on this, brother Shibata.
Thank you, Prairie Fire Kowalski.
All right, thanks y'all for having me on.
All right, thank you guys, and we are
out.